Hello, my name is Kays and welcome to another episode of Kays Labs. So why am I wearing a lab coat today? Well, it's because the cat dragged in a mighty Oberheim Matrix-6. I've always wanted to have one. I was a teenager when they came out and I couldn't afford it. The Oberheim Matrix-6 was the last full synthesizer with a keyboard to be released in the 80s by Oberheim, after which they went out of business, they went bankrupt, they got bought out. I think it's a fantastic sounding synthesizer. It's really fat, it's 6 voices, and it's got all sorts of like programmability function in it to make really crazy noises out of it. Now, there is a catch, of course, and the catch is that it doesn't work. The person that sold it to me said simply that it doesn't work, and they also said that it might have been used to scavenge parts from, which worries me a lot. We're going to open it up, take a look, and see if we can figure out what's going on and see if we can bring this Oberheim Matrix-6 back to life. As always, a word of warning, we're going to be dealing with live electricity that can kill you or hurt you really seriously. We're dealing with very delicate electronic componentry that can be damaged if you don't know how to handle them. So if you're following along and you're trying to repair your own Oberheim Matrix-6 and you don't feel comfortable around these types of circuits, it's probably best that you take it to somebody who knows what they're doing. On that note, I think we're ready to dig in and figure out if we can bring the Oberheim Matrix-6 back to life. Alright, boys and girls, so here we have the mighty Oberheim Matrix-6. This is the last analog synthesizer that Oberheim made in the late 80s. I think it was probably 86, 87. I always wanted to have one of these guys, and I was really happy to finally get my hands on one. There's just one problem. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, and the person who sold it to me was very straightforward and honest about it and said hey, look, you're buying something that's not working, so you're buying it as is with the intention of fixing it. However, I'm starting to have a little bit of a buyer's remorse, to be honest with you, because when I opened up the keyboard, what I found inside was not what I was expecting. So here, let's just kind of pull open the cover, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So starting out from the right side, so there is no transformer. There is, it's supposed to be like a transformer, like a little power transformer in here. And apparently somebody kind of ripped it out of this guy. I mean, this is like the power section, like the supply to kind of get all the voltages, but the actual transformer itself is missing. So that really stinks. Moving on, there is this chip missing right here. This I think it's like a CPU that's just completely been removed. There's another one here. I think this one is slightly different, but this guy is completely gone. There is a mess of stuff happening here with the firmware, and I'll show you a little bit later on the backside. There's whoever had this before was clearly trying to kind of mess around and screwed something up really bad, and had to rewire traces and things like that. This is not good at all. This is bad news. And then here we have the voice board, and the voice board is also problematic. Why? I mean, first of all, these are this is a 6 voice keyboard, so 1 2 3 4 5 6, and you'll notice that 3 voices are completely missing. The CEM, what is it? I think it's the 3396. They're in the $40 range each. So I mean, just for these 3, I'm looking at $120, and that assumes that these 3 are actually working. The other thing that is missing is, if we move over here, there's 1 2 3 of these chips. There's supposed to be 4. Yeah, so and that is there's some other modifications that were happening here. I mean, there's some kind of weird stuff going on here. I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, I mean, the point is that this keyboard has been messed with a lot. Now, On the plus side is that I actually have a second unit here that is working. This is from my good friend Mike, and he was kind enough to let me borrow his Matrix-6 so that I could, kind of have like some sort of comparison between mine and his, So this one is working. Everything works here. So you can see here, like, this is the actual transformer, that connects to the power circuit. Here you can see that we have this chip that is missing on that. There's none of that kind of crazy stuff that's happening with the firmware chip on the other board. And then moving on here, I don't know if you can kind of see, but like if we can peek through here, you can see all 4 of those other chips that are missing, plus of course all 6 of the voices are here. And there's none of that kind of weird stuff that I'm seeing on the other board. So this gives me like at least like a good baseline. Okay, so I mean this is kind of nice because it allows me to have a keyboard that works to compare against the one that is obviously a big mess. I think the first thing that I'm going to do is, because I purchased some stuff from, for the Korg DW6000 fix, but I also got like some extra things in anticipation of fixing this keyboard. One of them is this socket that I'm going to install in here. So that's going to go there. And of course, I was able to also purchase, this came from eBay, but hopefully this works. I mean, this is the CPU that's supposed to go in that slot. Because I have the working version of this keyboard here, I was able to start by like kind of swapping out some boards with this guy, just to see like what is working and what is it that I don't need to worry about. Let's put it this way. So what I did is I put like this board into the working keyboard. This is like the display and all the buttons and stuff like that. And this guy works, so I wrote, okay. So this guy, the display works, everything works, the buttons works. So this is good news right here. There's this guy that controls like the volume, and those are like the outputs. Those seem to be work as well. This guy, even though I don't have a transformer, but like, this other keyboard has a transformer. So once again, I removed this guy, hooked it up, and then like kind of tested all the voltage that was coming out. And this little guy works. Of course, those are like the least of my worries, because the real problem is probably going to be like this guy and this guy. So, without further ado, I'm just gonna like remove this guy and take a look at what's going on the backside. I cannot overstress the importance of taking photos before you start disconnecting things. And that's what I did, of course, just because of the fact that I just want to make sure that I know how to hook things back up. Beyond that, like the really nasty surprise for me came when I flipped this over, and I'll show you. Like, I mean, look at this stuff. I mean, what in the world? I just kind of feel like all this stuff needs to go. Like, I mean, I don't know what's going on here, but this seems really wrong to me. I mean, other than that, the rest of the circuit board, thankfully, doesn't look too bad. The first thing I'm gonna do is just put like the socket here, and then I can put like this chip back in there, and and then I am gonna start feeling like I'm making like some progress before I start tackling this mess. They want the hype shit. All right, so if you can see, I got like this guy sitting here, and I just need to solder it in place. But you always want to make sure that this little notch matches whatever is on the board, so that you know which direction to put like this the CPU in. So I did, and the first thing I like to do is just kind of take a little bit of the rosin stuff and just kind of put like a bit of a layer on it. I also like to use, I know this is like very environmentally uncool, but I do like to use partially leaded solder, because I think it just kind of melts much better. So what I like to do is kind of with on the backside, kind of hold it a little bit, put like a dab of solder on here on the tip of my iron, and kind of like push it in, make sure that it's nice and tight against the board, and then kind of solder like one pin, like just enough to kind of hold it in place, and then go to the opposite sides and solder the other side right here. Same thing. That's just like so that it just kind of holds it in place, and because I was pushing it with my finger, then it's nice and snug against the circuit board. And now I can just kind of go in and solder the rest. So with this guy in place, I'm just gonna hold off on putting like the actual chip in here until, while I'm working on the rest of the board. This is my board, and this is the one from the Matrix that is working. So if we can kind of compare a little bit, so there's that empty socket, and actually on this keyboard, that is also empty as well. Then what they did is they hardwired the firmware on the second slot, where in this one, ROM 1 is actually empty and the firmware is actually on ROM 2, which is kind of sort of like what used to be here. My inkling right now would be to, first of all, remove this guy and then see if I can kind of repair and put a socket in here. So I think that's what I'll tackle next, is like trying to kind of sort this stuff out. And what I might need to do is I might need to remove this board so that I can turn it on the flip side and just check the connections and see a little bit, run a continuity test with my multimeter just to see what is connected to what, so that I can somehow try to replicate it on this guy. After a whole lot of debating as to how to approach fixing this Matrix-6 board, I decided that my best bet would be to just kind of remove all this kind of crazy mess that was going on and kind of like try to repair the board to its pristine state. I removed the firmware that was hardwired here, and this is typically just kind of vacant, but the firmware is typically sitting right here. So what's really obvious that happened, I don't know if you guys can see this, it's really tiny, but basically they desoldered the firmware chip that was in here. And as I said, it's weird because there should have been a socket. I don't know, maybe the socket got damaged or something like that. And by doing so, I don't know if you can kind of see, but they really screwed up all of these traces here on the circuit board. I mean, they just kind of ripped it out. I think whoever did this didn't really know what the hell they were doing. So then their bright idea was, there's a free socket right here. Why don't we just kind of install the firmware in here and then just kind of literally just kind of jump over these guys, and that's where like these cables come in. They were just literally like just kind of bypassing this entire thing. This is really messy. I think it looks like crap, and I think it's prone to introduce some variables that I just don't really want to deal with. So because of that, I decided to remove everything, clean everything up, and then I'm just kind of very carefully trying to rebuild these traces. So what I got myself here is this copper wire, and this is very thin. You probably can't really see it on camera, just how freaking small this thing is. And the idea here is that I need to carefully cut this to size and very, very carefully solder it in place of these traces so that basically, you know, they're reconnected, because obviously this was like really, really damaged. It wasn't like terribly difficult. It was just kind of like precision work. So, you know, just kind of going in there with the tweezers and just kind of like very, very carefully kind of soldering. And then on the flip side, there was definitely some damage on there too. So I put one here, and then one here and one here. And these guys connect to here. I already tested it with continuity meter and everything checks out. There's also these guys that are just going to ground, and they were just like really damaged. Honestly, I don't even know what the hell happened here, because it was all like excavated. Like, it's like I just don't understand. Now, like, what I have to do is just kind of put the socket in here. I was gonna put another one here, but then I thought about it. I was like, well, you know, like the original, the one that's kind of working straight from the factory doesn't have anything here, and I just feel like it's probably just a waste of a socket just to have it match, and it's just kind of stupid. So I'm probably just gonna leave this empty, and as I said, just kind of put this guy on here so that like I can fit the firmware in here, and that should be it with this board. And then at that point, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to put all the chips in, and then try to kind of put it into like the keyboard that is working, and I'm gonna test it. I'm gonna see if indeed this board works, or if one of those many other, you know, integrated circuit chips is not working, which then gets into a whole other ball of wax there. But you know, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that after having like kind of sorted all this stuff out and put in, you know, the CPU back in, that everything on this board should be in working order. So fingers crossed as always. All right, so I just had like a bit of a crazy idea. I have like a bright light that I put like upside down, and I thought that like if I can kind of take some photographs of this thing against the lights, it almost kind of gives me, I don't know if you can kind of see here, like it gives me like a bit of like a X-ray sort of effect with the traces both on the top side and the bottom side visible. And so I figured like if I, like, I mean, this doesn't look like anything on video, but like I can take a photo of this and it's gonna look very clear. And this should give me a pretty good idea of what traces are going where. I mean, obviously within reason, because I mean, I'm not gonna be able to see like what's underneath, you know, all the IC chips in here, but it should give me like a pretty good idea of like generally where the traces are going. And because of that, I should be able to kind of, you know, like maybe troubleshoot some stuff a little bit easier than just by looking at it like this. What I want. They want that hype shit. I purchased some of this stuff, which is here. Let me show you. So this is it's like this stuff that's basically kind of like a coating. It kind of helps insulate the you know, the traces, and also kind of provides a little bit of like kind of structural stability to these little very, very thin sort of copper wires that I'm using. So I kind of painted some on this side, and then did the same thing on the other side, so you can kind of see that everything is nice and coated. What I did is I ended up actually like taking out the board from the good Matrix-6, the one that's working, that my friend Mike gave me. So I carefully like took out the board, and what I'm gonna do is I repopulated mine, and I'm gonna put mine into his synthesizer and see if this works. I also, like, while I had his board out, I like triple checked all of my connections to make sure that I had repaired things properly. I repopulated the chips, like, so I put like the new processor in here, the firmware is back in here. So everything should be okay. Everything matches as far as like all the connections, all the continuity and all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, I think I rewired this properly. So now, as I said, like the real test is to put it into the working Matrix-6 and see if it powers on, see what happens. All right, so with my board, now in his keyboard, in Mike's keyboard that works, or at least worked with his board, there's only one thing left to do, which is to, I hooked everything back up. I'm gonna close it down carefully. And now the thing that's left to do is to turn it on and see what happens. And I'm gonna keep an eye out on the display here. Okay, so that's not good. That is not good. I have a bit of a weird hunch, and my hunch is that maybe there's something wrong with the firmware. This is the firmware that came in the keyboard that I bought, that it doesn't work. So I swapped it out. I took out the firmware from Mike's working Matrix and put it in my board. And the reason why I suspect that maybe this firmware is kind of screwed up is just because of all this soldering and all the kind of weird stuff that had happened around this chip. And I just wonder if, like, somewhere along the way, this thing got damaged. So as I said, I borrowed the firmware from Mike's, processing board. I put it here. Let's just zoom out. Okay, I put it into his keyboard, and that's all I did. Let's turn it on and see what happens. Ah, look at that! I was right. It looks like the firmware is damaged. Let me see if we can get some sound here. I don't know if you can hear that. It's like a bit of a victory, a little victory theme, but this works. So this is great. This is fantastic. What that tells me is, one, I need to purchase a new firmware online because this one is obviously toast. And what this also tells me is that I did my job right and reconnected everything properly, and now the keyboard appears to be working. We have all of the different functions happening. We're getting sound from the keyboard. Obviously there's no patches in memory right now because keep in mind that the board has been like kind of disconnected and without power, and God knows what happened. So I wasn't expecting any real patches. That's why there's this kind of gibberish under the patch name, but I should be able to kind of install some sysx patches on my board, and then we should have maybe like the factory patches or something like that. But yeah, this is fantastic. This is really, really big milestone right here to just be able to kind of check off that board, the processing board, as working. Before I try to load up some patches in here and see if they'll stick, one of the things I want to do is I actually want to change this battery. I purchased some of these battery holders so that I can put in like a battery that can be like easily swapped in the future. All right, so I replaced the soldered in battery with this battery holder, which I think is going to be nicer for the future. And I'm just going to put like a brand new battery. Positive is the wider side, so that goes up. You can see, just make sure you kind of inserted it correctly, I guess. I found like some patches online, I hooked them up to MIDI to the Matrix-6 and kind of loaded stuff in, and now we have, a bunch of presets built in. And further, it tells me that the MIDI on my board, because keep in mind that right now, like, the processor is from my keyboard, so that's the processor module, the circuit board that I fixed, and that has all the MIDI stuff. So that tells me that the MIDI is working. And I have that hooked up the logic. So this is really great news. I guess like the only thing that I need to do now is like turn it off and switch it back on to make sure that it's actually staying in memory. Let's see. And there it is. This is fantastic. What a fantastic sounding synth. So with that in mind, just to kind of recap where things are, I tested this board, that works. Now this one has been tested and works. I tested like the display board, that works. The volume board works, the output board works. So that leaves the voice board that I'm gonna have to like take out and start taking a look a little bit like what's going on, because as I said, there have been some modifications. This thing is not present on the other working keyboard. This thing is definitely not there. So there's definitely been like some things that have been changed and swapped around. Like for instance, like there's this stuff right here, and I think that's because like some of these traces got damaged, so they're kind of hardwiring straight to the IC chip. I'm gonna have to like repair those because I don't like this type of business. The other thing on this side, there's definitely like some weird things going on. If you can see, like first of all, there's this looks like a non-polarized capacitor of some sort that has been wired here. There is a variable 20K resistor right here. And then there's this leg that's been lifted. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of kind of weird things. I'm not even sure if this guy is supposed to be in there or not. So I need to investigate what's going on here. There's like a little bit of kind of like traces that might need like a little bit of TLC over there. On the back side, let's see here. On the back side, we also find some strange anomalies. There's this bypass right here for whatever reason, but it's consistent with whatever they were doing on that side. And then there's a lot of kind of weird things going on here, which I think there might have been some damage that they were trying to like kind of fix. I decided to take the same approach with the voice board that I did with the processor board, and that is like just kind of start from scratch. I removed this guy that kind of had this kind of weird connections. And it really wasn't until I really started looking closely that I see these two traces are completely missing, which is why they had hardwired directly from over here all the way to the pins over there. Oh, yeah! Oh my God, that took forever. I don't know if you can even see what's going on there, but I think I was able to repair those things properly, and now I'm gonna put some protective coating, but man, did this was really tricky for sure. Put some of that protective coating on top. Now here's the funny thing. This thing requires UV light, which is plentiful from the sun. Unfortunately today, it's raining and it's cloudy. So the closest thing I have is this weird bug light that I hope is kind of like one of those UV bug attracting lights. I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'm just gonna let it sit here. I'm just gonna turn off the main light and just see if this thing can actually kind of cure it, because I don't know if this is gonna work. The little bug zapper lamp didn't really work, and I basically had to wait till the next day and put this out in the sun just so that it would harden, because otherwise it just stayed wet. I mean, it needs UV light. So, but I mean, I reconnected everything. I'm gonna test it. I'm just gonna run a quick test, continuity test, just to make sure that everything is kind of connecting to where it's supposed to. So like we got this guy here, this trace that you probably can't see. So this guy is actually going right here, if I'm correct. And there you go. I got continuity, and then this guy, the top one is going right here. There you go. And most importantly, I want to make sure that there's no accidental shorts between the two of them, and there isn't. And then I made a little fix here. So this guy is supposed to go here. and here. Yeah, maybe. No, this guy. Oh, I'm sorry. See, I got it wrong. It's here and here, and here and here, and then basically between these two. There you go. All right. So everything checks out. It should work. I can put the socket back in, and hopefully this little bit. Oh, and I gotta resolder this guy that I bent backwards just to give myself a little bit of room here. So I gotta put this guy back. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see what the hell I'm doing here, but I mean, I learned of this trick actually from another YouTube video, which is I have like these, you know, the little wires that are going to the traces. And basically what this guy was suggesting is to kind of like wrap them around the little leads here of my socket. And this kind of helps make a nice tight connection before soldering, especially if, you know, the little metal plate is no longer there and it got disconnected, which is the case here. So I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing right now with this guy. Let's see here. I'm just gonna click this off. So this guy is done, and then I got a third one right here. So the first thing I did is focused on the left side of the board where I replaced these three sockets, and then I had to do like some new traces on here and then some more on the back side that was like in really, really bad shape. But I think I was able to kind of get, it doesn't look pretty, but I tested everything and all the connections appear to be going to the right spots, and I'm not detecting any short circuits. So I think that this side of the board is done for now, at least until I test it. So now we're moving on to the right side of the board where there's some additional other kind of weird things going on. So first of all, in this, I don't know if you can kind of see here, in this R40 where there's supposed to be a 10K resistor, whoever owned this keyboard before had put this variable resistor here. I mean, this appears to be a 20K variable resistor for whatever reason. I don't know why, but I removed it, and now I'm gonna put like a 10K resistor in there as the way it's supposed to be. Secondly, there is this, looks like a non-polarized electrolytic capacitor running between this diode and what I think is the ground post here. Once again, I don't understand why this is here, but I definitely want to take this out for the time being. There's some additional kind of weirdness going on here. There's apparently some damage on these traces. No surprise there. And last but not least, right here, there's supposed to be a voltage regulator, and originally it wasn't like this big guy, but it was like a smaller transistor type, kind of similar to what we have here. And once again, this was removed and replaced with this guy that has a little bit like different tolerances. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this with a voltage regulator. It's a 5-volt voltage regulator that has a little bit closer tolerances to what it's supposed to be here in the first place. Well, getting this Oberheim Matrix-6 is turning out to be quite the challenge, but but I think it'll be worth it because I think it's one of the most awesome sounding synths from the mid 80s. So join me in the next video where we figure out if we can fully get it working, fix everything else that needs to be fixed, and get this puppy back in full working shape. Thank you so much for watching.